We live in a crazy world, where many violent and unexpected things can happen. Bombings and shootings are just some of the many violent things that sadly happen regularly. These incidents still happen today with the school shootings in Colorado or the bombings in Boston that just happened today. Whether these acts are for terrorism or just to do it, every person who commits one of these acts has to have some kind of motive. But what is it? That is one of the questions that's being asked quite often today. A lot of the blame is actually being pointed at violence in video games. Many people think these games are the main cause of such violence and should be completely banned. Others don't think they have anything to do with it and just don't care. No matter what you believe, this is a question that needs to be asked, and I believe that violent video games are a central cause to these events, and let me tell you why. A lot of popular video games available right now range from mild violence to games that have tons of amounts of blood and gore and are on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. However, most of the time the games are very fun and thousands, if not millions of people still play them. They don't care how graphic or violent they are, they're just fun. This is why many people believe that how these events are caused. If by people just playing and spending many hours a day playing these games, it can be something, it can do something to them. It raises their adrenaline and it causes them to be more aggressive. Even though these facts are true, scientifically there has not been proven to have an effect on people by playing these games. In an article talking about the same issue in the New York Times, it says, a dose of violent gaming makes people act a little more rudely than they would otherwise, at least for a few minutes after playing. It is far harder to determine whether cumulative exposure leads to real-world hostility over a long time. So knowing this fact, how can someone still think that video games cause these types of terrorist acts? Well, here's what most people don't understand. These games don't cause the violence, they just lead to it. If someone is constantly playing these games, it may not affect them at all, but another person may be. They may use these games after playing them for so long as ways to take out their anger and aggression, which can lead to that person making a conscious decision to act violent on their feelings outside of the game. These games desensitize people to violence, with how realistic the games are, and they get to the point where they can't tell the difference between pixels and the real world. And yes, there are some people out there who are mentally unstable and they can't control doing these different things, but there are many other people who make the conscious decision to open themselves up to these things and allow themselves to become violent. This is where each person needs to make their own decision on what games they play. For example, kids shouldn't be allowed to play violent video games. It may seem acceptable and like it's not affecting the children by playing these games, but it really is. An article in the Washington Post says, games do influence our youth on their perception of what is acceptable. If a child is constantly playing a game such as Grand Theft Auto, for example, they may not be able to actually do everything they can do in the game in real life, but they may slowly see it as acceptable and may just walk up to someone on the street and shoot them because in the game there's no consequences for doing something like that. If you're older and you can handle playing one of these games and it's something you want to allow yourself to play, then you can, as long as you're not allowing it to influence you or to cause you to become violent. You need to be more careful of what you're allowing to influence you. I also think that the media can influence these issues and they can help do a better job keeping them from happening. There's already age restrictions on M-rated games, but most people don't pay attention to them and parents still buy them for their kids. A book review by the Oxford University says violent video games are successfully marketed to and easily obtained by children and adolescents. Games are made to look accessible for children when they really are not. The game companies are more interested in making money and widening their target audience than they are in keeping everybody safe. In conclusion, I believe that video games are a cause of the violence in these violent happenings. However, they are not the main and only cause. They're just a stepping stone or a conduit that leads to real-life acts of violence. I don't believe that all of violent video games should be banned, but I do think that more restrictions should be placed on who can buy them and play them.